What if one of the most influential figures in U.S. foreign policy history was also one of its most controversial? This question brings us to the enigmatic Henry Kissinger, a central figure in U.S. foreign policy during the tense Cold War era. Born in Germany, Kissinger emigrated to the United States in the early 1930s, where he would later rise to become the U.S. Secretary of State and National Security Advisor. His strategic acumen was lauded by many, but his realpolitik approach often stirred the pot of controversy. Known for his Machiavellian tactics and unapologetic pursuit of national interests, Kissinger was, and still is, a figure of intense debate. His critics accused him of war crimes, while his supporters hailed him as a brilliant strategist. Yet his influence on international relations remains undeniable. So, let us delve into the world of his controversial statements and try to understand the man behind them. As we step into the early years of Kissinger's career, his views on power and realpolitik were already taking shape. In the fledgling stages of his career, Kissinger was no stranger to bold statements that echoed his strong beliefs. He once said, "Power is the ultimate aphrodisiac." This quote paints a vivid picture of how he viewed power, not just as a means to an end, but as an end in itself. A potent force, alluring and irresistible, much like an aphrodisiac. Kissinger's belief in realpolitik, a political theory advocating realistic and practical policies, was also evident in his quotes. He stated, "Realpolitik for me is a recognition of the actualities of power." This approach, grounded in the acceptance of power dynamics as they are, rather than as we wish them to be, was a cornerstone of his strategic thinking. His disregard for moral considerations in international relations was also prominently reflected in his words. "The statesman's duty is to bridge the gap between his nation's experience and his vision," he once proclaimed, suggesting that the moral high ground might sometimes need to be sacrificed for the sake of national interests. In another instance, he said, "America has no permanent friends or enemies, only interests." This quote encapsulates Kissinger's belief in the fluidity of alliances and the primacy of national interests. It's a stark reminder that in the arena of international politics, friendships are often transient, and enmities can be fleeting. Kissinger's words were not just reflections of his personal beliefs. They were also precursors to his later actions and policies. His words laid the groundwork for his approach to international relations, a pragmatic, sometimes ruthless, focus on national interests and power dynamics. In essence, Kissinger's early statements were a mirror to his views on power and realpolitik. They depicted a man who was unafraid to voice his beliefs, however controversial they might be. A man who believed in the raw power of power itself and the practicality of realpolitik. These early statements set the stage for Kissinger's later actions and policies. During the Nixon years, Kissinger's controversial statements reached their peak. As Nixon's national security advisor and later Secretary of State, Kissinger was the architect of foreign policies that continue to shape our world today. But it was his words, often stark and unapologetic, that ignited the most controversy. Let's take a journey back to those turbulent times and delve into some of Kissinger's most contentious quotes. On the Vietnam War, he once stated, "Military men are dumb, stupid animals to be used as pawns for foreign policy." This harsh statement presented a cynical view of soldiers' roles, reducing them to mere tools in the grand game of geopolitics. Kissinger's support for authoritarian regimes was also clear. In a conversation with Chile's military dictator, Augusto Pinochet, he remarked, "In the United States, as you know, we are sympathetic with what you're trying to do here." This quote underscored his readiness to back oppressive regimes as long as they served American interests. But perhaps the most chilling of his statements was this: "The illegal we do immediately, the unconstitutional takes a little longer." This quote, seemingly a blatant disregard for international law, sparked outrage and solidified his image as a ruthless pragmatist. On civilian casualties, Kissinger was equally dismissive, once saying about Cambodia, "Anything that flies on everything that moves." This statement, a green light for unrestricted bombing, reflected his cold calculus, where the ends justified the means, no matter the human cost. These statements not only reflect Kissinger's controversial views, but also give us insight into the policies of the Nixon administration. They paint a picture of a time when power politics often overshadowed human rights, a mindset that continues to be debated today. As we consider the impact of these words, we are reminded of the power of language and the lasting effects of political decisions. In his later years, Kissinger reflected on his actions and tried to justify them. He was a man of many words, some of which were attempts to explain his controversial decisions and policies. In one instance, he stated, "In international affairs, peace is not a natural state. It is a state that has to be created and recreated." This quote highlights his continued belief in realpolitik, the principle that power should be the primary goal of any nation. Furthermore, he once declared, "One must not allow oneself to skid down to isolation due to moral considerations without having made an effort to reconcile morality and politics." This statement showcases Kissinger's attempt to justify his decisions, reflecting his belief that politics and morality are often at odds. His reflections and justifications, however, did not change the controversial nature of his views. Kissinger, forever enigmatic, remained steadfast in his beliefs and his approach to international relations. Even in his later years, Kissinger's controversial views remained largely unchanged. As we come to the end of our journey through Kissinger's controversial statements, what can we say about his legacy? The themes that emerge from his quotes paint a picture of a man who viewed power as a game of chess. Kissinger's philosophy of realpolitik, his cold, pragmatic approach to foreign policy, emphasized the pursuit of national interests over idealistic notions of morality or justice. His impact on U.S. foreign policy is profound. His policies during the Vietnam War, his role in the opening of China, and his influence on the Middle East peace process are all testaments to his enduring legacy. But it's a complex legacy. To some, he's a pragmatic realist, a master strategist who navigated the turbulent waters of global politics with skill and finesse. To others, he's a figure synonymous with the dark side of American power, a man who prioritized strategic interests over human rights. Whether you admire him or despise him, there's no denying that Henry Kissinger left an indelible mark on U.S. foreign policy.